My name is Michael, and my life was very ordinary. Every morning I woke up, had breakfast, kissed my wife Lisa, and went to work. I worked as a manager in a large company, and my days were filled with the routine of meetings, reports, and endless calls. After work, I would come home, have dinner with Lisa, watch TV, or just chat about the day. On weekends, we would go shopping, to the movies, or visit friends. In general, nothing unusual. However, one evening changed everything. It was Thursday. I had just returned from work when Lisa told me the news. "Honey, remember I told you yesterday that my mom and I were planning to go out of town tomorrow to watch a meteor shower? Well, over the past week, and especially today, I've been completely exhausted at work, and I'm afraid I won't have the energy to go. Maybe you could keep my mom company instead of me. I really need to rest, as next week is expected to be even more hectic at work." For a moment, I was taken aback. Spend an evening alone with my mother-in-law? Elizabeth and I had never been particularly close, just maintaining a polite relationship for Lisa's sake, but it was awkward to refuse. "Of course, dear," I replied, trying to hide my confusion. "I'd be happy to help. Don't worry, get some rest." Lisa beamed and pecked me on the cheek. She immediately picked up the phone to give her mom the good news, and I was left to ponder what I had gotten myself into. On Friday evening, I picked up Elizabeth. She came out of the house with a picnic basket and folded blankets. "Michael, it's so sweet of you to agree to keep me company," she smiled, getting into the car. "Lisa said you're interested in astronomy?" "Yes, I was," I nodded, steering onto the highway. "As a child, I dreamed of becoming an astronaut and exploring other planets." "That's so romantic," Elizabeth sighed dreamily. I glanced at her in surprise. I never thought my practical mother-in-law could be a romantic soul. Half an hour later, we were at the spot, a picturesque meadow outside the city, far from the lights and bustle. Spreading out the blankets on the grass, we settled down facing the night sky. And only now did I fully appreciate the beauty of the moment. Above us stretched an infinite starry canvas, studded with myriads of twinkling lights. The silvery Milky Way flowed smoothly from horizon to horizon, and high above, bright streaks of meteors flashed now and then. "God, this is incredible," Elizabeth breathed, her eyes glued to the sky. "I've never seen anything like it." "Yes, the sight is truly amazing," I agreed. "In moments like these, you realize how small and insignificant we are in this vast universe." We lay on the blankets, admiring the cosmic wonder and talking quietly. And I caught myself thinking that for the first time in a long time, I felt peace and tranquility. Time flew by unnoticed. Elizabeth and I sipped hot coffee from a thermos, nibbling on sandwiches, and chatted about everything under the sun. I told her about my childhood, my dreams of becoming an astronaut, my first love, and she shared stories from her life, about her difficult youth in a small town, about meeting Lisa's father, about moving to the big city. Gradually, our conversation became more personal and frank. We shared not only joyful memories, but also our fears, doubts, and disappointments. "You know, sometimes it feels like life is passing me by," Elizabeth said thoughtfully, "like I haven't managed to do something truly important, meaningful." "I understand what you mean," I nodded. "I get that feeling too sometimes, like you're living on autopilot, going with the flow." I suddenly caught myself thinking that I had never talked about such topics with Lisa before. Our conversations usually revolved around everyday problems and plans for the future. And now, lying next to my mother-in-law under the boundless starry sky, I suddenly felt a strange kinship of souls. "But it's never too late to change something," Elizabeth suddenly smiled, and propping herself up on her elbow, looked into my eyes. "It's never too late to step off the beaten path and do something crazy, unthinkable." Her words and gaze suddenly took my breath away. My heart began to beat faster. A strange heat spread through my chest. What was this? Excitement? Anticipation? Or something else that I was afraid to name? I don't know which of us reached out first. I only remember that at some point our faces were very close, and I drowned in Elizabeth's green eyes. And the next moment, we were already kissing, greedily, frantically, as if for the last time. It was some kind of madness, an eclipse of reason. All thoughts of decency, morality, and marital duty evaporated, replaced by animal desire. I crushed Elizabeth's lips, burying my fingers in her hair, and she responded with no less fervor. The rest is remembered in snatches, in flashes. Faltering whispers, the rustle of clothing, ragged breathing, feverish caresses, fingers trembling with impatience, and the passion that flared up between us, fierce, unbridled. We made love right there on the grass under the silent stars. It was insanity, wildness. We both knew we would regret it later, but we could no longer stop. The spark that had ignited was too strong. The peak of pleasure overwhelmed us simultaneously, forcing us to arch in a silent scream. And then we collapsed onto the blanket, drained, stunned, drenched in sweat, and tried to catch our breath staring into the star-studded abyss. Reality crashed down all at once, mercilessly. What have we done? How to look each other and our loved ones in the eye now? What will I tell Lisa? My beloved, unsuspecting Lisa? "Michael," Elizabeth began, but I interrupted her. "We can't say it out loud, we can't put it into words. Otherwise, what happened will become too real. Don't. Just be quiet, okay?" I asked hoarsely, looking at the sky. She obediently fell silent, only sighing softly, and gently laid her head on my chest. We lay like that for about an hour, I think, silently, afraid to disturb the fragile balance. And then, without agreeing, we started to get dressed. It was time to return to reality. The whole way home we didn't say a word, each lost in our own thoughts, trying to make sense of what had happened. The atmosphere in the car was strange, tense, viscous. Stopping at Elizabeth's house, I turned to her. I needed to say something, to explain, to apologize, but my tongue seemed to be stuck to the roof of my mouth. "Michael, this—" She was the first to break the silence. "This doesn't mean anything. We just got carried away by the moment. It can happen to anyone." I nodded, not looking at her. A moment of weakness, nothing more. It happens. And how good that we both understand this and don't harbor any illusions. "No one should know," I said quietly but firmly. "Not Lisa, not anyone else. It will destroy our lives, our families. Let's pretend it never happened." Elizabeth nodded in agreement. Relief flashed in her eyes. Yes, we acted badly, made a mistake. But if this mistake remains a secret, we can get through it. I'll go," she mumbled, reaching for the door handle. For a moment, I had a sharp urge to hold her back, but I restrained myself. "Good night, Elizabeth," I said evenly. "See you around." She nodded, and without looking back, trudged toward the house. And I sat in the car for a long time, staring unseeingly at her retreating figure, and tried to understand how a single night had almost entangled my whole life. The following days I lived my usual life. I went to work, talked to colleagues, spent time with Lisa. The world around me remained the same, but something imperceptibly changed. I often found myself thinking about Elizabeth and our night under the stars. I remembered her touches, kisses, the feeling of closeness. But these thoughts didn't evoke shame or guilt, rather a slight surprise and curiosity, as if I was rediscovering something previously unknown in myself. At the same time, I clearly realized that there were no deep feelings between Elizabeth and me. It was passion, a flash of attraction caused by circumstances. We both got carried away by the moment, but it didn't change anything in our relationship. When we crossed paths at family gatherings, Elizabeth acted as if nothing had happened. She smiled cordially, kept up the conversation, inquired about affairs. Not a hint of awkwardness or ambiguity. The perfect mother-in-law, as before. Only occasionally did I notice in her gaze a reflection of what had happened between us. Not embarrassment or guilt, rather understanding and acceptance. We had shared something special, but we both knew it had to stay in the past. Life went on as usual. Work, home, meeting with friends. I cherished and loved my family, my familiar world. And what happened with Elizabeth did not diminish these feelings in any way. I just had a little secret now. Exciting, thrilling, but not threatening. Months passed, and the memories of that night gradually faded, lost their sharpness. But they didn't completely disappear. Sometimes I would catch Elizabeth's thoughtful gaze when we gathered as a family, and I knew that she too was remembering. The madness under the stars, the heat of bodies, the faltering whispers. We didn't talk about it, even when alone, but we were united by common knowledge, an invisible bond. I didn't regret what happened. I didn't feel guilt or shame. After all, it was just an episode, an exception to the rules, a momentary weakness that, by giving into it, we only confirmed its transience. Elizabeth and I didn't hide anything from those around us. There was simply nothing to hide. There was no secret affair, no love correspondence, no furtive glances. There was one night that became our personal secret, a little secret that warmed the soul but didn't burn. I loved Lisa, and our marriage was still strong. We made plans, raised children, shared joys and sorrows. And now, when I looked at my wife, there was no hesitation or doubt in my heart. Only love and gratitude for our shared journey. That night with Elizabeth was a beautiful, magical adventure, but only a brief episode, an exception to the rules. Returning to everyday life, we both clearly realized where the line was between fleeting passion and true intimacy, and we chose what was truly valuable. Sometimes I dream of the starry sky and the whisper of the wind in the grass, and the silhouette of a woman next to me. Beautiful, desirable. I wake up with a slight smile and lie for a long time, staring into the darkness. And I think about how strangely and unpredictably love, duty, and fleeting attraction sometimes intertwine in our lives. But one thing I know for sure, coincidences are not accidental. Perhaps that night was necessary for us to see the present more clearly, to fully feel the value of what we have. And having looked beyond the edge of what is allowed, to make sure that our place is here, next to those we love. Thank you, Elizabeth, for that night and for this lesson. Our little secret will stay with me forever, as a reminder that there is always a place for magic in life, but the real miracle is still love, loyalty, and spiritual closeness, what we cherish and try to preserve, despite all the temptations of the world. Did you like this story? Let us know in the comments what you liked. Subscribe to our storytelling podcast. Also, don't forget to like and ring the bell so you don't miss more interesting stories. See you soon.